Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. It's the 3rd of September and the deer on the farm have definitely started feeding on acorns. I noticed that here just a couple of days ago. The bur oaks are dropping acorns. The deer have really started to focus in on that. Seems a little bit early, but maybe that makes sense. Maybe that's part of what happens when we lose these bucks. They go from their summer ranges to their fall ranges. They disperse, break up their bachelor groups, but at the same time, they change what they're feeding on. And they're definitely hitting acorns now. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk more about this, about understanding the transition and really how to hunt it. But most importantly, it really comes down to, as long as there's acorns out there, the bucks are going to be feeding on them, and that's going to be where you find them. So hopefully you enjoy the episode. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, B3 Releases, XO Broadheads, Exact Sights, and Hoyt. I was in the process of doing my final update on the acorn situation on the farm here. I thought it would be worthwhile to do an episode talking about specifically how acorns affect behavior and the strategy that we use hunting these deer. I wrote an article for Bowhunter magazine recently, and I got into that topic, and as I was unpacking it there, it kind of hit me that this is probably something that we need to do an episode about. So much of the past in my life I've just sort of blown off the acorns because they've never been so dominant in the behavior of the deer that I worried about it. So let's say it takes them until the 20th of October to mop up all the acorns, and then they show back up on the open fields again or moving. They're back to traveling. Well, this past season they didn't mop up the acorns. So it really impacted how much movement we got throughout the whole season.
Because like you said last year, or maybe it was while we were scouting this winter once, why would they leave their bedding areas when there are just loads of acorns right there?
Yeah.
Like, why would they travel to go find something to eat when they have a full buffet right next to them?
Yeah. So now that gets me thinking about why give up those first 2 or 3 weeks of the season waiting for them to mop up the acorns so they go back to the types of behavior and the patterns that I'm most comfortable hunting. I like hunting the fringes. I'm always a little bit nervous about going into the timber, especially early in the season, for fear that I'm going to bump these bucks that maybe when the rut comes they're going to be moving more in daylight and they're going to be more vulnerable. Why educate them now in October when they're not moving and they're not vulnerable? Well, maybe they are moving and maybe they are vulnerable, but they're focused on the acorns. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a new approach for me as I look at the seasons ahead. Don't give up those first 2 or 3 weeks of October waiting for the deer to come out of the cover. Cautiously, intelligently go in after them. And I think that's super important if you're hunting areas with not very many really good food sources where the acorns might be the only show in town. Some public land is like that. Don't wait, get in there and hunt those spots.
Do you think that applies every year or more on like the really strong acorn production years? Like last year was historically heavy with acorns. This year I don't think it's quite as much. So would you factor in the acorns this year?
Yeah, I think every year there's some.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of, as you prepare for the season, you're trying to figure out how long is this going to last.
Right.
And I've always just, like I said, just kind of been lazy about it. And I thought, well, I don't have to go to them. Eventually they're going to come to me.
Right.
Because they're going to eat all the acorns. And then once they do, then they're going to be more vulnerable. They're going to be out moving again in the open. And it just didn't happen last year. So what I'm saying is every year, there's going to be some period where they're on acorns, mm-hmm. unless there's a complete failure. And again, like I said, I'm doing my final acorn update, and I'd say we're at gosh, if I had to guess a number, I'd say we're 10 or 15% of what we had last year.
Which is probably really good for...
It's an average to below average, I'd
No,
say.
I mean like for us as hunters,
yeah.
predicting, and like just for deer movement being patternable and huntable easily, probably better than last year where it was difficult to draw them anywhere.
Well, we just did it wrong
Yeah.
last year. That's my point.
Okay.
Is they were moving, they just weren't moving very far.
Right.
They were vulnerable, they just not in the places that we were used to hunting them,
Right.
which is out in the more open.
Right.
So the takeaway, I guess, on this episode hopefully is that get out there, scout, find out where your best acorns are. You know, where are your oak trees that have the most acorns? And there's a few here. I know of a couple of them that for sure I'm going to sit on, and when the time is right, the deer are going to be feeding there. Even if that means I'm only shooting a couple of does, the action is going to be in those places until the acorns are mopped up. They love the acorns that much.
So that's a dependable every year. That's going to be, the acorns are going to be a strong enough draw to disrupt their normal patterns. And once the acorns are gone, they'll go back to what they were doing before.
Right.
It's just a matter of how many acorns and how long the distraction lasts.
Right, and whether or not you take advantage of it.
Gotcha.
And you have to be thinking ahead. You have to say, okay, this is one of those years when there's not many, let me plan for more movement towards open areas, or this is a year with a ton. Don't hang your hat on the deer coming out because they're not going to come out until the acorns are gone.
Right.
That's the general plan now. I've scouted my last scout. I'm not going to look for acorns anymore. I've got a pretty good idea, where to be and what it looks like. I recommend doing the same thing where you hunt. Find those oak trees that have the most acorns and then plan early season hunts around those places. Because when they're gone, the deer are going to be other places. Well, we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream
big.